Regular meeting of the Batavia Board of Education, March 19th, 2019 at 7 o'clock p.m. Kathy, could you please call the roll?
Baby Bar.
Here.
Blakely.
Here.
Dryden.
I am here.
Gasper.
Here.
Locke.
Here.
Lowe.
Present.
Drummond.
Here. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Dr. Hickson, are there any items to be added to or removed from the agenda this evening?
There are not.
All right, then I am excited to jump right in. I would like to invite Jeff Modaff up to the podium to talk about his question formation technique at Grace McLean this year. We love it when you bring friends.
I'm a parade.
Hi guys, how are you?
Hi.
All right, well thank you for letting us celebrate a little bit about our learning at Grace McWayne tonight. I brought with me some friends, as you saw. So we have Colin Havel, Leah Stutenberg, and Chloe Bernal. And I also have with me our instructional coach, Kelly Woodard, to help us out. We're celebrating tonight a personalized learning strategy known as question formulation technique. And we're celebrating the fact that all of the students at Grace McWayne now know how to do this technique. And to prove that to you, we brought some friends along who are going to teach you the QFT is what we go by, QFT, the question formulation technique. So just a quick background, you can first start out by showing you how our kids are engaged in this. A lot of times it involves a lot of sticky notes, and the kids are deep into lots of critical thinking. But to give you a background, it's a technique where students produce their own questions, and then they have to improve them. And you follow along because you have to do this tonight. And then you have to then strategize on how to use them. And I think that third one is the biggest piece. What do we do with our good questions? And that's what they're grappling with this year with this technique. So the cool thing is that our good friend Hattie says that student formulation of their own questions is one of the most effective metacognitive strategy. So that is one of the reasons why we brought it to Grace McWayne. Seeing that looking at learning improving by nearly 50% according to his statistics. Appropriate. Can you pass it on from you? Or?
PowerPoint failure here?
But here's the problem. Here's the thing that was kind of interesting to see about the research behind this is that when you have students who are 2, 3, 4, or even 5 years old, they ask lots of good questions. They're very curious about the world. And at that point, they don't necessarily have the knowledge and skills to go out and explore and find the answers to those questions. Then all of a sudden, as you see the orange line going down, they stop asking those good questions. So what we're trying to instill in all the students at Grace McWayne is to keep that aim line going, that trend line going up, so where they're asking those good questions. But again, the reason we stop asking questions is because we don't know what to do with them. We don't know the strategies on how to seek out that knowledge. So we're working on getting that trend line keep going up through teaching them the QFT. So with that said, all right, so Colin's going to start you out. We're going to get into the QFT. This is going to be a very abbreviated version because this would normally take 20 to 30 minutes if you did it fully and really got into it.
I got all night.
But Colin's going to start you out by sharing a little bit about the rules of QFT, and then we'll get into the actual practice. So Colin, it's all you, buddy.
Thank you.
I'm just going to review the rules before we start. The first rule is ask as many questions about the Q focus and some topics on the Q focus with the section that we're going to show you on the whiteboard. Do not stop to judge, discuss, or answer any questions, and ask the question, and exactly how it is asked, and change statements into questions. Now you have 30 minutes to write down questions. After the question comes out, you may work on first next year.
How many minutes, Colin?
3 minutes.
3?
We usually give the children more time,
What, are
but
we in a hurry here?
I guess.
All right. So a lot of times your cue focus or your focus for questioning is a picture. And that goes very well with our elementary group. So here's a picture. And write down any questions that come to mind.
And you can work with your friend next.
Yeah, you can work with
Make sure they're doing
Really fast. We were asking, who is the girl? Who are the U.S. Marshals? Why are they throwing tomatoes? It's so funny. Is she going to serve?
Is it a tomato or oh, sure. You should. I would have been good. How do we know? She just telling her.
Coming up with your questions.
How many?
And really, are you in a position to critique Norman Rockwell?
one more minute to ask questions.
Making depth perception difficult.
Well, are we supposed to be questioning
What's in his pocket?
Did you get right? Yeah. Leah, please. We don't.
Why are they cheating?
About 30 seconds to write that one, maybe last question.
Why do they have like that?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, who's observing this?
I'm going to ask Colin, Chloe, and Leah to come back here. Okay, so keep that. I can't keep that picture up for you, but keep that picture in your mind because you're going to go on to the next part of QFT, and I believe this is the part that Leah's going to share.
You probably have two different kinds of questions in your list. Closed-ended questions and open-ended questions. Closed-ended questions can be answered with a yes or a no or with one word. Open-ended questions cannot be answered with yes or no or one word. These questions will lead to research or exploration. Can you find the closed-ended questions in your list of questions? Do you know how to change those questions to open-ended questions?
I do.
So that is Leah's task for you now. You are now going to improve your questions by trying to make a few of them that are closed into open-ended.
Here's some posters that they need. Yeah, you can help.
You want to turn these into open?
Yeah.
Have a closed-ended
Yeah,
question.
remind them what the past.
See if you can
What to do, they maybe forgot.
Are there more people who have this question?
Who want ideas? Remember that, like, by the yes or no question.
I was going to say, who's observing
So
this?
yours
Probably
is
a better
so instead of, you can say the
I know, but I know.
We got it.
Okay.
Oh, wait, no, that's yours.
Thank you.
Are they like?
And again, being the abbreviated version of this, we'll give you about 20, 30 more seconds to work on this.
Is it the same thing?
Oh, where are they going? Where do you think it's going? Can I just say that?
Why or why?
Yeah, good job. Appreciate that.
All right, so I'm going to bring Leah, Colin, and Chloe back here. And within our abbreviated version of Q of T, Chloe's going to show that last part that we do.
Now you can look over all your questions that you wrote down. Now you may pick your top 10 questions and put an X next to them. You have to make sure you remember the picture. Now you should think about why you chose those questions. Now be ready to share your questions and why you chose them.
I love this one.
That's a close-ended question.
We have to go with three. Two? Only top three. Three.
All right, hopefully you have your three, if not your top two. All right. So we're going to ask you to pick one of those three and share out to our friends that we brought with tonight. And we got one more piece to this. So if you had to pick one of your questions, and maybe we'll just go down the line that you asked about the Ruby version of picture.
You go, Jeff. So want us to throw you out the question?
Yeah, one question, just one.
Why is the girl walking with the man? We'll just make it that simple.
Great.
Did I take yours? Did we take yours?
It was close. The one that we picked is how do they all know each other?
What is happening? We want to know who is what, who's observing this.
So kind of like who took the picture or?
Yeah, who's like on the outside looking.
Awesome, awesome. So as you can see, if you took any one of those questions and you posted it on the board afterwards and then figure it out, so what strategies now do we need to answer that question? It could lead to a lot of good discussion. It could lead to teaching them about where to find good resources and checking those resources and so forth. So it leads to a lot of good things that we want to do with kids in school. So this was actually activity was just done last week with first graders. Here's some of their questions. So, is she a special person? Why are there policemen with her? Is she the president's daughter? Is she at school? That's what makes me smile so much. But you can see even those questions then could lead to a lot of learning, not only about the painting, but also about the history going on in that time period, or maybe decision making, social justice, all those different pieces could be woven in. And it's all connected to what students were interested in the very beginning by answering those questions. So, that is it. Thank you for letting us share about QFT.
Thank you.
Great job.
Presentations teach us something that's valuable.
I'm only gonna look at Next, I would like to invite Brian Dwemke and his staff to talk to us about the redesignation of RMS as a school to watch.
Well, thank you very much for having us here tonight. March is Middle Level Education Month, which is a real thing for us. You just learned some great questioning techniques. We're going to share with you just a little bit of information about our schools to watch. We've been doing this since the early 2000s, and we wanted to take an opportunity to show you kind of the group who was responsible for our application and our wonderful work at Rotolo every day. So we have Jen Hicks, Kelly Bennett, Matt Jeffrey, Morgan Connell, and Jody Stoneberg, who are all part of the redesignation team. And I'm going to turn it over to Kelly Bennett to talk about what that experience was like when a group from the state of Illinois came out to visit Rotolo.
Yeah, it was a great experience that I got to be a part of. All of the members that came, I think there was 8 different members that came and kind of observed a day in the life at Rotolo. So from the morning of watching kids get certificates for Dazzle Dogs to having members from the principal advisory committee kind of showing them around and showing them around the building and making sure that they had everything they needed. It was nice to see like the kids interacting with the adults, and as a teacher seeing all of that scene without just being in the classroom was nice. They took the visitors around to see exploratory classes, core classes. They got to watch co-teaching. They got to see the principal advisory committee kids working with members from PAWS and the DO classes. They got to visit PLC meetings, team meetings. They got to meet with different groups of students. So they met with a panel of students that were athletes and part of the after-school clubs, so they could see all the different opportunities that we offered. They got to meet with another group of students that were representative of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade from every team. So they were able to interview them and see what it was like to be a student at Rotolo. They met with a parent committee. They got to talk to all the teachers. And then at the end of the day, they all filled out a rubric based on academic excellence, developmental responsiveness, social equity, and organizational structure. And based on the rubric, they unanimously decided that we were qualified to get our 3rd redesignation for the schools to watch.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It was a kind of an interesting process when we started. It was almost like a scrapbooking session where we were just trying to, list as many different programs that were happening, all around the school, and everything we did in the classroom, outside the classroom, after school, before school, and it became pretty eye-opening. It was amazing at how much we actually do. It was almost hard to manage, and how much we are doing now that we weren't even doing 3 or 4 years ago. So it was kind of very exciting, but a little bit overwhelming. We do a lot, more than we thought.
Well, I do have to say, if you were wishing you were a fly on the wall while the students were talking to the team, I actually was a fly on the wall. I snuck in on one of them, and it was really interesting. It was the group that you were talking about with the extracurricular students being able to talk about their extracurricular experience. So I'm sure they were very prepared to talk about that. But the team began asking them questions about their academics, about cell phone policies, about their social emotional supports, and the kids were so articulate about everything, and they were just so excited to share about all of their experiences. But the fact that they knew, like, here's how we access social emotional support, here's how we do this, and all of them were able to speak on that, even though that wasn't their topic that they thought they were coming to say. It was great. They have great kids.
We do.
Mm-hmm.
So members of this team will be heading out to Washington, D.C. the last week of June to join about another 200 schools. There's only about 200 schools in the nation that have received this designation this year, either being redesignated or designated for the first time. About 26 or 27 middle schools in the state of Illinois. So members of this team will be headed out to Washington, D.C. this summer for some professional learning, as well as to present the Rotolo story. Visit Capitol Hill, talk about middle level education with representatives, and it's a great opportunity. And this process happens every 3 years. And while it's fantastic to receive the designation and the recognition, it really is our commitment to continuous improvement, which is a part of our overall district mission, which matches very well with this program as well. So, thank you.
Thank you.
we have anything to tonight? Nobody in the audience wanting to make public comment before the board? All right, then we will jump right to Todd Swanson, EA President.
Hi, everyone. Okay, just a couple updates real quick for tonight. I know the last couple meetings I've been reminding you about our upcoming trivia night, which is now our past trivia night. So thanks to everyone that came out for that. But the most exciting news with that is that with our total profits from that night, the BEA is going to be able to award 2 scholarships in the amount of $2,108. One of those scholarships is going to go to a student from Batavia High School that's going into education, and another one for the career and technical education component. Applications, if you know a senior that's going into one of those 2 fields, are due on April the 1st, and they can get those applications from the counselors at the high school. So we're spreading that word, but if you have anyone approach you with that, and Tina's been really good about getting the word out, so thank you for that. But it's really great to be able, the BEA used to just give $1,000 scholarships to 2 people, and since we've been started our trivia night, we've more than doubled what we can give. So thank you guys for helping us with that. It's very much appreciated. Secondly, just it's amazing to think that 2 weeks from right now, we'll have elections from the school board results coming in. So good luck to everybody that's running and rerunning again for this year for the school board. And just an awareness, if you see kids and staff members that are a little more frazzled right now, we're knee deep in the throes of the park replacement tests. It's now called IAR, so it's gone through another name change, but I know, luckily for me, it is over in 5th grade at our school, but there are still some grade levels that are going through the testing this week yet, so a little bit of pats on the back and encouragement. Which leads me just to my last point is everybody's really looking forward to spring break. So one of the things my kids told me, some of the kids were talking about where they were going, and one of my kids was like, oh, I'm going to LA. I'm like, oh, you're going out to California? He's in the local area. And so whether you're going near or far, just have a great and safe spring break, and we will see you all in April. So thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Todd. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and we have Olivia as our sole student representative tonight.
Yes. Unfortunately, Chris couldn't be here. His sister's in from university, so they're going out for dinner, so that's where he is. But jumping into the high school, so there have been a couple achievements in the athletic department. Katrina Schlenker, who's a freshman who runs distance for track, actually just set a fieldhouse record. She broke the 2-mile with a time of 10 minutes and 32 seconds. Which is a little bit crazy to think of because her relay team also broke the 4x800. I believe it was a week earlier, and she also broke some other record for the 1 mile. I don't know, she's killing it. That's basically all that I have to say about that. She's a freshman.
And it's only indoor. We haven't even gone outside yet.
Yes.
So crazy. She's crazy.
Yeah.
To watch her.
And then on top of that also, I don't know whether or not you were aware, but this year girls wrestling started at the high school, and state for that just passed, and we actually had a state champion, Taylin Long. She's a sophomore. She won, so that's a really awesome achievement to kick off the girls wrestling at the high school. And yes, good for her. And then on top of that, Key Club went to a banquet award ceremony-esque thing, and they actually won 4 awards in first place. You might know because of Sarah, perhaps. But yeah, so our Key Club was highly decorated this year. And then a new term started on Monday. So for the seniors, it's their last term. And then for everyone else, it's just 4th term. So everyone's enjoying their new classes. And additionally, our next board meeting is end of April. But until then, we will have the SAT administered to all juniors on April 9th. And then all other grades except for seniors will take the PSAT. And also, Chris said that he will have a college announcement for you all next month. So we'll have that to look forward to. Yes. Yes. Thank you.
On the SAT thing, I understand
Yes.
there's a guy in California that you can call.
Yeah. If you find his number, send it to me. Thank you.
Wow.
I'm kidding.
Sorry. It's okay. Thanks for throwing it back.
keep up with John driving. All right, next we'll go to board committee updates. So let's start down with John Gaspar.
I have none.
Okay, insurance committee met last week? Last week. I think we're making real progress in the targets that the board has set. And I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but I think it's going to happen in the foreseeable future. I think there's a lot of commitment at the table there to find a plan that's sustainable as we go forward. So I'm feeling pretty encouraged by it right now. And I don't know which of you will take my place on that committee and be steely-eyed and grim and do that kind of thing, but certainly it's needed. Anyway, that's it.
Did I miss a meeting?
You did.
I was a little incapacitated.
Good one.
I was incapacitated. Is it my turn now?
Yes.
Oh, RAC met the week prior to that, but I wasn't incapacitated, and we welcomed our newest member, Tanya Wick, citizen representative, and we discussed proposal Stand With Children, or proposal from Stand With Children on a pension cost shift, and local property taxes were also discussed. So it was a page turner as typical for RAC. Covered a lot of ground. It was a great meeting. We just covered a lot of ground, and it was, you know, a lot of learning in the process. There are so many moving pieces, and it's fun to try to wrap your head around all of it, but it's also great to just be informed of how much needs to be decided and managed on any given minute in the district. So it's always a great committee to be part of.
Awesome, thanks, Bob. I have no updates.
We didn't meet. I don't have any updates from Clark either. Soon we need.
Mark, got nothing?
It's been boring, I guess.
I have a few things. I went to the STEM school last week, I believe it was. They had their energy fair. It was more like a science fair, and it was pretty unbelievable, some of the work the kids out there were doing. Like fourth graders that made these models, that electrical components that I wouldn't even know how to do these things, that circuits, and you push a button and they made the thing spin, and all with things just found in the classrooms. It was pretty amazing what the kids were doing. And you know, this is 3rd through 8th graders, and so it was interesting to see what 3rd graders were doing versus the 8th graders, but they're still, it's pretty amazing the work they do out there. And also, Brad told me the lottery was held yesterday or today? Today. There were over 40 applicants, and we took eight. Yeah, 8. So, and they've been notified, I believe.
I called them all today.
They've all been notified, so congratulations. I wish them all well. It's a wonderful experience. So, also, the Beefy Scholarship Committee met last week, and we had over 49 applicants for about, 6 different scholarships. And I have to say, we have some amazing, amazing students in Batavia. And although it's really fun to give out the scholarships and the money, it's also very difficult to give out them, because you really wish you had room for everybody. So we will be making, the whole board has to meet next week or later this week, Thursday, and make the final approval, and then we'll be making the announcements. But it was very just heartwarming to see all the kids and read their stories and everything. So we have some great kids in Batavia, and that's what makes this job fun. You don't do it for the pay. So that's it.
All right, excellent. The next item on our agenda is our consent agenda, which is our opportunity to handle a number of routine business items with one vote. Everything has been outlined in the board book. So, Mr. Pierce, if you would take us through the consent agenda.
Absolutely. 5.1 is the approval of our regular board meeting from last month on February 19th. 5.2 is the personnel report. 5.3 is the monthly payroll and bills. 5.4, we have 3 donations. Louise White PTO chip-in, as always, continues to support our low-income families, and Walmart. 5.5 is the approval of the joint agreement with the Fox Valley Career Center. 5.6, approval of the annual support contract for Power School. 5.7, the approval for the contract for our internet service. 5.8, approval of our contract for the technology infrastructure support services. 5.9, approval of our contract for athletic training services. 5.10, approval of disposal of surplus property. And we always wrap up with 5.11, which is the approval of the consent agenda.
All right, are there any items on the consent agenda for removal or clarification?
Go ahead, Bob. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, we can start down with you, John. That's-
Go.
All right.
It's like keeping it.
Oh, I'll go.
Go, John.
I know this comes up every year around this time, on the personnel report, the honorable dismissal list. And I forgot even what it was called from last year to this year, so I called in and asked some questions about it today. But I also was reached out to by some community members for clarification about the list as well. And I thought it might be good for just us to put out on VATV, like how this
What
list
it
comes
is.
to be, what this means. Can we do that?
For sure.
Okay.
For sure.
Yeah, over the course of the, there's 23 staff members that are listed on this list. 21 of those 23 are staff members that were hired with a temporary contract, perhaps replacing a staff member that's out on leave. So when they're hired, we say, hey, this is a one-year contract. We're going to let you know in March. We have to follow the state process, and they'll get a certified letter on this that will be mailed out tomorrow. A number of them included in that group are people that maybe we hired mid-year. You'll note on there's several people who are interventionists. A lot of those people were hired maybe anytime between October and early February. Additionally, we have people on here that we had an extended leave of sorts. People who are out on parental leave. There's all sorts. We run the gamut in terms of people that we hire with these temporary contracts. There's a number of people on here that are part-time. And what it does is it allowed us to kind of clear the personnel table and then establish where we're at and then assess our needs for next year. And then we kind of enter into the next phase, which is our voluntary and involuntary process for staff members that we post internally for staff members if they want to move internally. And then when that clears, which is generally a couple of weeks after spring break, then we enter into our hiring phase. So it's really an annual process. If you looked back, ironically, last year we let go of 23 people at the same board meeting last year, and it's something we do annually. And it really allows us to make sure that we're not exposed to being overstaffed and can properly assess our needs and then make the right decisions moving forward as we move into the spring. Now I believe Dr. Hitchens may have alerted this to you, but we will be posting some positions tomorrow once we've kind of done, this has been approved, because there are some difficult to hire positions that we strategically post early because we want to get to those people before other school districts start hiring them so we can get the best candidates. So you will see some, I'll be sending an email out to our staff about some postings tomorrow, and you'll also see some of those posted because those hard to fill positions, they're not just unique to Batavia. They're positions that people are looking for significantly all over the suburbs of Chicago and really all over the state and really nationally with some of them. So that's kind of what we do on an annual basis to be properly staffed and also make sure that we're making the right decisions moving forward and getting the right people.
So there are no surprises. I mean, they know this all up front. As I talked to Dr. Hitchens yesterday when I had my meeting, the same thing came up.
Yeah,
I know when I first started, there was that probationary, you were let go, came back and all that. I know we've gone away from that kind of a little bit in some areas, but this has totally different.
There are two people on here that and I failed to mention this, I apologize. There are two people on this list that we did as a staffing reduction over at Rotolo. Having said that, that's part of what happens. They're non-tenured, And we have to continue to match our enrollment and student needs with our staffing plan, hence sometimes we have to make those decisions too. The good news is that as you look over this list, if you look at last year's list, you might see some of the same people on both of these lists. And so the good news, if you will, is that there's a lot of really good people on this list that we really value. And there is high potential that some of these people will be hired back as these new positions open up once we kind of assess and understand exactly what we need for next year.
Right. For example, we could find that we need X number of interventionists still for next year.
I can assure you that we will be posting those interventionist
Right.
positions, yes.
But then also with some of the retirements that are coming up that we've approved, we also know these people in certain areas that could also help us bring somebody back into our district.
That's exactly right, and I would say that we have somewhat of a track record of that, yes, when this is a great pool of people because these folks have proven themselves, they've built relationships with other staff members in the community, and oftentimes we will hire them and they come along with us and stay on and become tenured and hopefully stay here a long time. So that can happen also.
Okay.
Did everyone have like the same question?
No, my question was something different. Are you on the same subject though?
So much more. I don't know, what's your subject?
I'm on 5.7.
Oh.
Are you still in the?
Hey, me too. Cool, go ahead.
Are we done with the personnel report?
Yes.
Done? Okay.
Yes.
I don't have questions.
Unless you had something, Bob.
Nope.
Okay. My question was going to be, or not really a question, a comment on the 5.7, the contract of the internet. It was explained to me by Lisa and Don, and I appreciated that yesterday. My only concern was the 60-month contract being so long with something so new of not knowing. But I was assured by Don that there's written parts in there that if something goes down or wrong, it's almost like we'll get a rebate back or something, not paying for all of it if that happens, but kind of getting away from having one location for both these spots. So we possibly won't be down all over the place. So my only concern, like I said, on that was knowing that, so I can go with this at this time. So I don't know what yours was on that.
Well, I just want to broaden the whole thing. Don, do you mind? Can you just give us a couple of minutes rationale on Metronet? Is this new money? Are we shifting money? Why them as opposed to someone else? Just a couple of quick minutes.
Sure. They're new, aren't they? They're new in our area.
I mean, I'm hearing good things, but
we're saving a couple of money.
So we've traditionally, for many years, we've had two internet service providers. Just you always want two of everything pretty much in the tech world. And one company, which is currently called CenturyLink, expires on June 30th. And so we issued an RFP type document to get a second provider. Our other provider lasts for 2 more years. So we needed a second one. And we issued the RFP. Metronet came in as the lowest of the 8 responders, and lowest price is always good, especially in the E-rate world. And not only that, they offered us a benefit or a feature that we've never had. Currently, we have 2 internet connections at the city of Batavia, and it is a single point of failure risk that if that one building would go offline, all of our buildings would be down with the internet. We've kind of gambled over the years having that set up that has worked out very well. But then when Metronet came in and said, we can provide you the internet at a low cost, we can also connect you directly to this building and directly to the high school for no cost. We did have another bid that offered to do the same thing for $200,000. And so it was really a no-brainer, in my opinion. And It was an easy
Okay.
decision.
What's the savings CenturyLink versus Metronet? Significant, right?
The Metronet is a little bit higher, a couple $100 a month.
But that doesn't take into account the 2 points.
Correct. And it also provides us DDoS protection, which we've never had. And
Have
that's
we ever had a DDoS attack?
Okay,
Yeah, we
now
did
you guys
actually.
are teasing out.
DDoS, that's right. Denial of service.
Okay.
Distributed denial of service.
These are good things.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Don.
Don.
Sorry, didn't mean to take it in.
You went there.
I'm done. I'm
All
good.
right.
Thank you.
John Dryden, you have any more questions?
No, thank you.
Bobby, good, you don't want to throw out any more?
You're like, oh no, no more acronyms, no. I
Okay.
hate those.
Anyone else?
Nope.
I'm good.
All right, then I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Blakely, second by, was that you, John Dryden?
Yes, why not?
Second by Dryden. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, consent agenda approved as presented. The next item on our agenda is our reports. I will turn that over to Dr. Hitchens.
Nothing new to report other than our 2 recurring items, FOIA requests that we responded to this month, and the treasurer report. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
No questions? All right, we do have a number of items on our agenda tonight for action, so I'll turn it over to Dr. Hitchens and she can pass to whomever.
Sure, the first one is the extension of the transportation contract. So I can turn it over to Tony, or I can just, I think, or Mark's here. Mark's going to talk as well. We have, our 3-year contract is up, and so we would like to extend it. We have that option to extend with Illinois Central for 2 years, so you can see the terms there that we have negotiated with them for the extension.
Yeah, actually, the terms were part of the original bid if we both mutually agreed to extend the contract. Illinois Central isn't interested in extending the contract, and so the term is that the price is increased by CPI for both years. 1.9% for the first year because that's the CPI increase for us, and then to be determined for 2021.
That was really exciting. Any other
Yeah,
questions?
let's call the motion.
All right, then I would entertain a motion to approve the extension of the transportation contract as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Dryden, second by Locke. Kitty, could you please call the roll on this one?
Sure can. Beatty
Yep.
Blakely,
Yes.
Drummond,
Yes.
Dryden,
Yes.
Gaspar,
Abstain.
Locke,
Yes.
Lowe.
Yes.
All right.
The next item, I'm going to turn it over
So
to
is
Lindsay.
Lindsay,
Yep.
yes. The athletic uniform bid.
So the athletic uniforms at the high school, the contract that we currently have with Graphic Edge is expiring in June. And so this year we took it out to bid since we do so much business with them. And, it's tens of thousands of dollars per year. So we received 3 bids. One company declined to bid on cheerleading, and then one bid was only for cheerleading. So among all 3 bids, the Graphic Edge was all-inclusive and in totality was the lowest cost, which is what we're currently with. So I'm recommending that we enter into a 3-year contract with Graphic Edge for the high school only. The only difference is that this is shifting our uniforms to Adidas when historically we've been Under Armour. And that was a preference of the athletic department and the industry. And it's more common to kind of switch uniforms after a number of years, and so that's what they would prefer to do. And so the total contract amount is $89,034.
2 questions. Is Graphic Edge a local company?
The rep is local. I believe they're based out of another state, but we have a
Okay,
local
so they're
rep.
not a Batavia print shop.
No.
Was there any local company that bid?
The other bit of
Any
it
from
was-
Batavia?
I don't believe so. BSN Sports and Varsity Sports. Varsity and
Are they
BSN. I don't
from
believe they're local either, them.
Are there any trickle-down implications ditching Under Armour in favor of Adidas? Like, I feel like I see Bulldog logos floating around with the Under Armour insignia on them somewhere.
Yeah, so how it works currently is that this purchase is just for varsity uniforms, and so after the varsity is done with the uniforms, they pass it along to like the lower junior varsity, and then I think after that to freshman teams, and so there will be some
So
trickle
we'll
down.
have mixed branding. Okay, that's what.
Yeah, but it's not believed to be an issue.
I just didn't know if there were like gym posters or something that had like co-sponsored by Under Armour and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I mean, this contract does include some kind of branding package, so they would bring in their own promotional materials for us to display.
Sick crap memory.
Yeah, there's public spaces, commercial space. Can we call a motion?
No other questions? All right, then I would entertain a motion to approve a 3-year contract with Graphic Edge and Adidas for the purchase of athletic uniforms and spirit wear.
So moved.
Moved by Locke, seconded very quietly by Blakely. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
And I do know we're going to ask Mark to come up and talk about the RMS athletic entrance. It's the athletic night apparently. I know we're pushing for it because of the tournament.
Last year, I was in the same position at about the exact same time, one day off. Last year, we did the
What did
main...
we tell you then?
You said yes. I mean, if you want to get the motion that quick, John.
How'd that work out?
It worked out. For the
How'd
most
that work
part, very
out?
well. And we really learned a lot from that one too, as far as lead time items. And so a little background with this bid is we moved the bid back 3 days, and believe it or not, 3 days really got us 3 bids. So industry right now is very busy. It's very difficult to get contractors for bids at this point. And mainly it's because it's a $500,000 job. Believe it or not, a lot of those contractors are $10+ million. So with this one, 3 bids were entered. And the spread was, I was happy with it. I think last year, even if I remember correctly, we had some that were kind of outliers and way out. And I think some of you guys had questions on that. These were all within, the $100,000 range. And the bid Light Construction is a local company. They have not done any work in the district, but they have done a lot of work in area districts. I know East Aurora, West Aurora, down in Sandwich, they did local work with St. Charles last year, and that's really what brought them up here to start looking at more business in this area, and they're doing more work in St. Charles as well. So being the proximity, being close, really was in our favor. And the bid was really, really close to the budgeted capital projects. I think it was $4,000 difference, which is very close. So the entrance, as far as the look, will look just like the main entrance. We're going to do a very similar look. We are adding a vestibule. If you're familiar with Rotolo, at the athletic entrance, we do not have one of those. So basically, talking efficiency and energy, and you come in and there goes your heat or your air. So we are adding that vestibule in there. Some other things, as I put in there, we're updating the space a little bit, putting some more space for kids to, not only wait for rides, but some kids, believe it or not, wait a while, 30 minutes to 45, sometimes an hour. So we're adding some space and power so they can work on their Chromebooks, actually sit down somewhere and then just sit in the middle of the hallway. So with this, we're adding those features as well.
Is that in, on how wide is the vestibule, or from the front doors, the new front doors to the second set of doors? How much of a distance is going to be there? If you're saying there's going to be a second set, right? Or am I misunderstanding?
Yeah, there will be a vestibule area. So there will be an exterior set and then an interior set of doors.
So what's
as well.
the distance on that? Is it going to be like the one in the main
Not
part?
that, it's probably a third of that size.
About a third of that size.
Yeah. So it's going to go out roughly 6 feet and in roughly 6 feet. So picture where the doors are now, and you go towards the parking lot about 6 feet and then come in about 6 feet. And really that area, there's space for that. It's a large, yeah. Though really another, I guess, difference, the width is gonna be the same, but we're not gonna have 6 doors. It's gonna be 4 doors. Not that that's a huge deal, but we don't need, it's really more doors, more failure.
So all
And
those,
kids, if you know, they use 2 doors. They use the same doors every single day.
and those prices there were all compatible, I mean, exactly what the scopes were and everything, when they came back, so, okay.
Yeah, and we did, because of time, this was just this past Friday, we did a scope review on site with the contractor. So that was done, so obviously we get it to you guys tonight.
Are the only partitions just the main unit, the main glass wall indoors?
Yeah.
So no other partition, most of it's furniture, electrical, and stuff like that?
Flooring,
Okay.
paint, some lighting, because we're going to change the inside, so there's some lighting, but mostly it's entranceway.
I know that kids hang out there every day, especially if they have the later
Yeah.
practices.
Correct.
They'll just stay after school and do
I like
their
the
homework.
idea of having some more seating.
Built into this is where we built the trophy cases in. I don't know if you know where the trophy cases are now. We built that into the wall, the partition wall. And so where the trophy cases are now, it's going to be kind of a standing height area with stools for them to work and to plug in, and
Yeah.
very similar to the main entrance.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions?
Well, I did have one concern, maybe, that I guess I was a little disheartened, maybe, that the main entrance was not finished by the beginning of school, and I'm probably not the only one,
Yeah.
you know. Are there any contingencies, I mean, I know there's no guarantees in life, you
Right.
know.
Yeah, there
This probably
specifically
is not the big,
isn't
as
in
big
the
a,
contract, and it's not. The scope of work is
The scope
much
of-
smaller.
Right.
There's a lot more office renovations that were done with that one as well. And the other thing that we really learned is lead time items with a lot of
Okay.
that. So that was important, even though it was, done at about the same time. The expectations of the contractors are different as far as we know exactly what took the longest in the last one, and it's the exact same type of materials.
because I would kind of like to see it done right first thing.
And even though
I'm
the
sure I'm not the
contractor that
only
did it
one,
last
right?
time actually put a bid in, but they weren't the lowest bidder.
So there's no guarantees, but
Anyone
Thanks,
else?
Mark.
thank you.
All right, then I would entertain a motion that we award Light Construction a contract to complete the Rotolo Middle School entry renovation project for the sum of $491,000.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Gaspar, second by Baby Bar. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
So last month, we had a conversation with DLR about how we would approach the recommendations that came from the facilities committee. And we share with you DLR's suggestion that we kind of take a step back and take a look at our options, do some more formal and comprehensive master facilities plan. And it seemed that at the time, the board agreed with that recommendation, at least in concept, and wanted to do a little bit more to understand what that would entail. And so in the intervening month, we have met with DLR, invited John Gaspar and Chris Lowe to join us in having a conversation to really start planning the process, kind of planning the plan of what that process would look like, engaging stakeholders in the community and in the schools, teachers, students, to talk about what the vision of our district is and how our facilities fit into that vision, and then look at the nuts and bolts in the schools themselves in terms of the conditions of the buildings and what we need to do to get them to sustain that vision and support it. So attached to the report is a document that goes into much greater detail of what that process involves, and DLR, I'm happy to talk about some of those details with you to this evening, so especially for those board members who didn't have an opportunity to get a deeper dive. Joining us tonight are Dennis Bain and Carrie Van Sant from DLR, as they were here last month too. Between the three of them and Mark, the three of them should be able to answer any questions you might have about this. So Dennis, would you, at a very high level, just so that we understand what's happening here, give us a rundown of the approach for master facility planning?
Sure. So it was a great conversation at the last board meeting. I was encouraged by the line of questioning and the inquisition in terms of, the why part, because we are trying to change the way we think in terms of being focused on what, and then figure out how, and then try and figure out why we did it in the first place. So the whole educational facility master plan is different from a facility master plan where it's more than what's broken needs fixed. The educational facility master plan is really focused on the education first, which we understand is kind of the next level in terms of helping define what 21st century learning looks like in Batavia. And we think that's a phenomenal direction because the facilities then respond, the bricks and mortars then respond to that educational vision, not the other way around. And so it's first things first, and this process and our approach, working from the why conversation, we had the meeting over the last month, how do we go about doing this? And this is a document that we usually sit down with people and kind of go through, and we had great conversations in terms of restructuring it and make it more in terms of the flow for how it should maybe work in Batavia. A lot of conversations on who should be involved. But as you go through the process, it's kind of key-coded with when those three groups, if you will, would participate in certain activities. And then we also then talked about, well, what does this thing look like at the end? And we pulled up a few websites and stuff, and it's very simple. It's not proprietary software, it's web-based, it's digital, so it can be active, updated constantly, and not just put in a 3-ring binder and set on the shelf. And so we went through this in terms of the how, we looked at the what, and it all kind of came together. We edited accordingly and then resubmitted it, and I believe you all have that in your packet. It is very much a bottom-up approach, community engagement. At the end of the day, it is not our plan. We don't present the plan. We work with the three groups to compose the plan. We're basically the hands. We ask the right questions at the appropriate time. I do want to make sure that we understand that this is by far not a rigid sequence of events. Because as we start unfolding and starting to go into the deeper dives into the phase 1, the phase 2s and such, if we find that the community needs to go a different direction in terms of why we do this, why, we're going to go that direction. And we'll probably have twice as much invested into this process as our give back for you investing in us in terms of hiring us as your architect of record. So there's the nickel and diming won't happen, but just be aware that this is not a thing like this. It could go around and around, and we're hoping that we're targeting sometime maybe end of May of next year that we would have a very cohesive plan that the community can present to you for recommendation and possibly approval to initiate. Is that high level enough?
It is.
Okay.
So Dennis talked about kind of the what and the why and the how. I think the next natural tendency is who, and we talked a little bit about that with Chris and with John, and we talked about what that process, like who would be involved in what that process would look like.
Before we jump into that, can we just step back just a second? Can I ask a question? What exactly will the final product look like as far as how will it be a useful tool for us? Because from what you were explaining, it sounds like we are paying for a final product regardless of how we get there. And this contract is for us to get a master plan. So what exactly will that look like and how will it aid us in what we do?
So typically the end deliverable, once the core team or the makeup of the core team, which is a mix of administrators, staff, community members, business leaders, once they make a recommendation to the board and the board chooses to adopt a direction, a digital master plan would be created. And we've done that. I think we presented examples from Barrington and Winnetka. So
on that website highlights the process. Every presentation, every document, every infographic is what we call them, full of the data that we've garnered throughout the entire process is located on the digital website that can be accessed by anyone in the community. It's a reference point that the district can use to indicate options and potential implementation strategies. So that really is your deliverable.
Of specific projects, though?
It will outline, yes, it will outline, it will provide a roadmap for the district moving forward related to potential projects that you can decide on depending on the direction that you want to move forward with. So it will enumerate those projects, high-level costs related to those projects, and a plan and how to implement those projects.
So like the order that we should do them in, that kind of stuff.
It'll have like a cash flow in it.
That typical implementation is done, the board goes through the implementation part of it and establishes how they want to phase the work. And so then the website can be updated for that information.
You might remember, and for those, like I'm specifically speaking to John because he wasn't here last month.
Oh, hello. Yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to see what happened while I was gone.
I spoke on your behalf a lot.
Thank you. But, you know, one of the things that we struggled with in the Facilities Commission, our committee, was we were trying to envision the future and what is in particular the 21st century classroom would look like. But then we also knew in the short term that there are some very important and relatively urgent things that we need to address in our facilities, and reconciling those two with the expertise that we had available to us and the time frame. And then what it boils down to is that this process that DLR is recommending to us is everything that we had hoped to accomplish earlier, but gives us the resources, the time, and the expertise to actually put together a real plan that gives the board information and options and integrates input from stakeholders from across the community. So this is the big picture. You might recall the Facilities Committee also said, hey, by the way, in addition to doing these 29 projects, 27 or 29, I don't recall which, of varying degrees of urgency and importance, you better start thinking about this 21st century learning thing, despite the fact that we're 19% of the way into the 21st century. So that's why we're here.
Well said. Well
Can I
said.
just, I'm going to ask a couple of questions, make a comment, because I'm playing catch up here.
Okay.
I'm fairly convinced that the reason that we would hire you to do this and pay you to do this is because we can't do this internally. Correct? This is not an option for us. We need the outside thing. My concern would be, please put this at rest right now, and I do love a lot of community input. I also know that the definition of a camel is a horse created by committee. So, from kind of what I'm hearing from you, this is going to be a work in process, lots of input that can change as we go. There are stakeholders, there are other stakeholders and other stakeholders. So maybe this isn't a question, maybe it's just a query. Are we generally comfortable here? I wasn't here last month. After your Q&A, are we generally comfortable that this is going to be an outcome where we want to be?
My perspective, I would say that if we are, as a board, are comfortable with the final product, that we will have a roadmap that will show us what improvements we need to make and in what order we should make them in.
So your answer is you don't know until you see the final product, which is a year out, maybe?
No. I think that we all need to be comfortable with it before we go forward, because I think buy-in from the entire board is important.
Okay.
But I will posit that we might not be comfortable with the end product because it might put us in a zone that we're not comfortable with.
Well, the one thing that I liked about this was there are the three main groups, and the one main group, the core team, when this all gets finalized, will come back to us with 3 options, correct? A minimum. A lot of times we come back with 1 option. Correct. I like this because it comes up with what I've always have asked for a lot of things. Give me another option than 1. And this is coming to 3, so it could give us an idea on a price range of which one to do. But I also like the fact that from our facilities commission that we just did, we didn't come up with what we thought we were going to get. And that made it hard because also there's 7 of us. And with 7 different questions and the vision, if you will, on what this was going to look like, I think this can narrow it down, thanks to also Mark's crew and his help on that list of capital projects. The only thing that the 7, okay, when I'm off script, I get, and I'm not on medicine, so.
It's all good.
Oh, I've got some.
If I go back and forth, I apologize. What I liked about this was there's 3 different groups, 3 different stakeholder groups. The one core one had a division of administrative staff, and then the other one was our community. With that said, I said to Lisa and even to Kathy that group that we just had, I would like to see a few different people from that group who I thought should be on this one, even by invitation, because they have the knowledge of coming onto this and knows what way we were thinking of going. But it also gives us that every month or every 2 months they can come back to us and talk to us, knowing what's going on, so we can keep this as an active discussion and not waiting until May of 2020. The 3 options is great. The only concern I had on this, and I talked to them when we had our meeting, was the cost. Now, we brought the cost down a little bit from what it was originally, thanks to Mark and his crew of having things already in place. I would have liked to seen a little bit more, being conservative on that part, but they guaranteed us there's not going to be the nickel and dime of 5 months down the road, oh, by the way, $10,000 more. I like that part. But I do believe we need a plan 3 to 5 years out so that we know which direction we're going. And I think we have to start it now. So that was my take on that committee. So if it helps any of you, there you go, if I made any sense.
The middle part, Dave.
Yeah, thank you.
I think John kind of started to hit on it, and I think I interrupted Tony before he got to it, but I think an important part of this in our trust level is who makes up that committee, that core group. And so we kind of started talking over the framework of what that would be, but is that where you were going, Tony?
Yeah, I was. But I think John kind of mentioned it. It's really going to be a process that we're going to try to involve as many people as we can. The core group can't be too large because you can't have too many people involved because it's tough to get them all in the room and get kind of a cogent rationale around everything. But about 20 people. We're trying to pull back as many folks from the facilities committee, be sure that we're careful in targeting the key stakeholder groups around the community, and that's what it boils down to. And we want to start soon.
So percentage-wise, what percentage would be administration versus what percentage would be from the community? I think we started talking about those percentages a little bit.
We did.
Yeah, I have our notes up from that meeting. We did have the 10 staff members, 3 of whom were teachers, and then we have Mark, a building administrator from each level, Brad, Tony, and myself. So that makes up the 10 staff. And then the 10 community, we identified some priority seats that we reach out to some of our partners in the community and ask them if they would like a seat. And we targeted a couple of them. And then also some other specific, maybe invitations to some other businesses or educational groups in the area to see if they want a seat, but also having those community seats as well. And John talked about targeting some of the people that were already on the facilities committee.
But we also said that this is a big commitment, so we want people on there that are going to be at the meetings.
Right.
And just not by name, that they have to show up and do it, because it makes no sense otherwise if they're not going to be there. So they have to know that, and we talked about that. So.
Yeah, there's plenty of other opportunities for people to be engaged in the process, but that core team needs to commit to, how many meetings were you guys talking about? I can't remember.
We've in the past, it's been anywhere from 150 to 200 hours commitment to people volunteering on the core team.
Boy, that'll bring them in.
Just get me out on social media, I'll get people.
Yeah, but so the important part to emphasize though is just because somebody isn't on the core team doesn't mean they're not going to have an opportunity to participate.
So something else that we had discussed during the meeting was board member involvement. And we had toyed with the idea of, rather than having one single board rep, to potentially rotate. And so each one of us would have the opportunity to sit on various meetings. And in addition to the monthly updates that we would be receiving, I feel like we would be very informed as to what we are doing and whether or not we're going down the right road or the wrong road.
But only as a liaison and not as a voting member of that
Correct,
court.
yeah. We're just more observing the process and making sure that process.
The other part I think is pretty important too is that DLR is committed to giving regular monthly updates to the board so that this isn't just something we go off and do for a year and a half and come back and surprise you with. The board will know where we are throughout the process.
And it's not just the why, the what order and how, it's also funding recommendations as well, correct? If I
That is
understood
correct. So the process does build upon itself, and so, what do we have to work with? And then what does the future look like of learning? And then we gel those together in terms of the programming. So what are the space needs to match up with that vision for learning? And then we put together the concepts that demonstrates how your buildings would start to adapt or transform or reinvent themselves in the context of what that 21st century learning looks like as defined by your district. And from there then, and you mentioned the options, so the options that will come forth will have order of magnitude costs, because with costs and options then you can determine value, because it's all about a value proposition. But that value proposition would be based on everything that you learned from phase 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So over the next year, your district will really, to be honest, have a better understanding from the get-go what happens when they drop off their student at the front door and pick their student up in the evening, and what happens in between currently and what might happen in the next 4 or 5 years. And how does the district need to respond and start to transform to work that direction? And then the order of magnitude costs will give you that direction in terms of the bang for the buck. And it'll help establish first things first. And where do we need to focus because we're behind, or to get ahead of the game, or to leverage success that's currently happening, or change gears to fix some things that could be better. So it's, at the end of the day, when the core team presents the final plan to you, it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. In fact, it's just should come down to a question of, do we want to invest that or in that or not? It shouldn't be a question of that's too expensive. It should be looked at as an investment because you've seen the value. You understand where you're at, you understand where you're going, and this is what it takes, and I'm willing to invest.
And then I think we should learn from this morning or this early evening's presentation with the first graders. Ask your questions at the meeting, so that would also help out. So,
Yes, sir.
I think this is the right approach. I'm going to abstain from the vote, not because I think it's the wrong approach. I do think it's the right approach. I'm going to abstain because I'm a lame duck here. I think this is a big decision. It's really about, the next decade too. And I think I'm just going to step back from that vote, although I can certainly see why we've gone this direction.
I'm going to just, if you don't mind, I appreciate that, and we did talk about that at our meeting, about if we should hold off another month with the election coming up.
Yeah.
And I said that we talked about this for last year. I said, we cannot wait anymore. I mean, we've been talking about it. I respect whatever you're going to do. The only reason I would not recommend waiting is just because we've been on the process of doing this. We cannot wait any longer.
Yeah, no, I think we should take
I wanted to say I respect your thinking.
I think it's time to...
And let people know that we did talk about it, so.
All right, does anyone have any other questions? All right, then I would entertain a motion that we approve a master architectural and engineering services contract with DLR Inc. and engage DLR Inc. in master planning services for educational facilities in the amount of $225,000.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Beatty Bar, second by Locke. Kathy, could you please do a roll call?
Beatty Bar,
Yes.
Blakely.
Yes.
Dremel.
Yes.
Dryden.
Abstain.
Gaspar.
Yes.
Locke.
Yes.
Lowe.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. That was all of our items for action tonight, so now we'll
Thank you,
move
guys.
on to comments. Yes, thank you
We'll see you
for
soon.
coming tonight. We shall be seeing you.
Thank you.
A lot of you, actually.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, definitely.
Except for John, he won't be seeing you.
We're gonna pull him back here. All right, Dr. Hitchens, administration comments.
Right, administration comments. Tonight, I would like to talk about John Dryden. So we have a meeting in April that we'll be seating a new board member, and I said to John that tonight we wanted to talk about him and give him a chance to say his goodbyes, because even though he will be here in April, you know, there's going to be a lot of other things going on. Like I said, seating a new board member, swearing them in, and we want to make sure that we have the chance to thank him for his service. And I think it's super appropriate that we had the students lead us off tonight talking about asking good questions, because I feel like I've known John a long time. We taught together starting in '94 at the high school, and I know John to be somebody who loves a good discourse and really does his homework and asks good questions and engages in good discussions. So thank you for all of your service. We want to give you this plaque.
I won.
So thank you, John, appreciate it.
All right, so, thank you. I dropped into Batavia in the early 1980s. Didn't really know anyone. And it took a long time for the town to know me and me to know the town. And I feel like over the years that we've gotten to know each other. And I've been honored, 27 years of service to the district, but that was about the community. And a lot of people in this town give great service to this community. And I'm pleased and honored to be part of that group. So, it's been a heck of a ride. You guys were great to work with. I wish you the best in the future. So thanks. Yeah. All right.
I would like to say that I appreciate John's foresight on everything and his different perspective. I was glad that you were on the board. Always a different perspective is great. I didn't feel so lonely down here at times, and all kidding aside, but no, your knowledge, as Lisa said, and your involvement and your heart just goes to basically the community and the kids and stuff. So I think you will be missed. But thank you.
Each one of you all sitting up here have given me so much in 2 very brief years, and you definitely have been a very great board mentor for me, because you taught me how to forget my preconceives, to listen, and then vote from the heart. And thanks, it's been awesome.
Thank you.
John, I don't think there is a board member that could give me the emotions you've given me. And that could be in like an hour. You have made me laugh. You have raised my blood pressure. You have a passion for kids, and that's what makes me enjoy the last 4 years with you. You love the kids, and you do love Batavia. So you've taught me a lot. You've taught me to be patient, and you've taught me to have to look at things in different ways. So thank you.
Thank you. John, you have been very interesting to have on the board. It makes every day showing up here an experience. And I'm glad for that. I admire your passion that you have for education, for our kids, for this community. I'm not sure that Batavia has a bigger champion than you. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your service. It's been a pleasure sitting on the board with you. Thank you.
I can't believe it's been 4 years.
Neither can John.
John, we don't agree on much, but we've always agreed. The for what's best for the kids. We may not agree how to get there, but the end result we always want the same. So I respect you for that.
Thank you, sir.
And I wish you well in the future.
Jen, you and I have grappled. We have battled in a really good way that I never thought I would do with anybody. I would agree that sometimes you can be infuriating, but in a way that just makes me learn, makes me step back, makes me walk away, and sometimes say, damn it, I have to admit he's right. And I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that you made me more than I was before you joined the board. I appreciate the fact that we actually figured out we were of the same mind more often than we realized. And I appreciate the fact that you make me laugh and you've made this job so interesting with you at it. And you will be missed.
Thank you.
I don't know if any board members had any other comments. I kind of feel like I'd like to go out on a John Dryden high. Really?
Well said, well said. I'm good with that.
Closed session tonight, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session to discuss collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees, the setting of a price for sale or lease of property owned by the public body, and the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. However, a meeting to consider an increase in compensation to a specific employee or a public body that is subject to the Local Government Wage Increase Transparency Act may not be closed and shall be open to the public and posted and held in accordance with the Open Meetings Act.
God, I can't believe you do that from memory every time.
What was the middle part?
That was an entertaining.
So moved.
Thank you. Moved by Lowe, second by Blakely. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Do we need a recess?
Yes. Briefly, please.